The whiskey bottle slipped from Marcus Gray's trembling hands, shattering against the weathered wooden floor of his cabin. For 3 years, he had lived as a ghost in the mountains above Cedar Falls, drowning his sorrows in drink and isolation. The former sheriff had lost everything that mattered: his wife, his son, his purpose. Now, at 45, he was nothing more than a broken man waiting for death to claim him. Subscribe to our channel for more incredible tales from the Old West. That will capture your heart and keep you on the edge of your seat. The knock on his door came at dawn, soft and hesitant. Marcus ignored it, assuming it was another well-meaning townsperson trying to coax him back to civilization. But the sound came again, more insistent this time, followed by something that made his blood run cold: the cry of a baby. He stumbled to the door, his vision blurred by alcohol and exhaustion. On his porch sat a wicker basket, and inside it a child no more than 6 months old. The baby's eyes were the deepest blue he had ever seen, and clutched in tiny fingers was a leather medallion unlike anything he had ever witnessed. What in the name of ... Marcus muttered, his voice hoarse from disuse. He looked around desperately for whoever had left this precious cargo, but the mountain trail was empty. Only the wind whispered through the pine trees, carrying with it the scent of mystery and danger. The baby gurgled softly, reaching up with chubby hands toward Marcus's weathered face. Despite his condition, something stirred deep within the broken man's heart. He had not felt such tenderness since his own son had died of fever 3 winters ago. Beneath the child lay a rolled piece of parchment, sealed with red wax. Marcus's hands shook as he broke the seal and unrolled what appeared to be a map. The paper was old but well preserved, showing a detailed layout of the surrounding mountains with strange symbols and markings he couldn't decipher, but it was the note attached to the map that made his heart stop. Marcus Gray, you are the only man left who can be trusted. This child is Sarah Elizabeth Cartwright, daughter of the late Thomas Cartwright. The medallion and map are her birthright and the key to a fortune that evil men would kill for. Protect her with your life, for she is the last hope of the Cartwright legacy. The wolves are coming, and they will not stop until they have what they seek. Trust no one in Cedar Falls. The corruption runs deeper than you know. It was signed simply, a friend who remembers the man you used to be. Marcus's mind reeled. Thomas Cartwright had been one of the wealthiest prospectors in the territory before his mysterious disappearance 6 months ago. Rumors had swirled about a secret gold mine, but no one had ever found proof. Now, it seemed, the proof was literally in his hands. The baby began to cry, a sound that cut through Marcus's alcoholic haze like a knife. He had 2 choices: turn away and let someone else deal with this burden, or step back into a world he had abandoned. The child's cries grew louder, more desperate, and Marcus found himself lifting the basket with surprising gentleness. "All right, little one," he whispered, his voice breaking. "Looks like we're in this together." Inside the cabin, Marcus tried to remember everything his late wife had taught him about caring for infants. The baby needed food, and he had nothing but hardtack and whiskey. Panic began to set in as he realized the magnitude of what he had undertaken. A rider approached the cabin, and Marcus's instincts, dulled by years of drink, but not destroyed, screamed danger. He peered through the window to see a man in a black duster, his face hidden beneath a wide-brimmed hat. The stranger's horse was lathered with sweat, suggesting he had ridden hard to get here. "Gray," the man called out, "we know you're in there. We just want to talk." Marcus's hand moved instinctively to his gun belt, but found nothing. He had sold his weapons months ago for drinking money. The baby continued to cry, and Marcus knew the sound would give away their presence. "We know about the child, Gray. Make this easy on yourself and hand her over." The words confirmed Marcus's worst fears. Whoever had left the baby had been right about the wolves coming. These men had somehow tracked the child to his cabin with supernatural speed. But how had they known she would be brought here? Marcus grabbed the medallion and map, stuffing them into his jacket. The baby's cries had subsided into soft whimpers, as if she sensed the danger surrounding them. He moved to the back of the cabin, where a small window offered escape into the dense forest. "You've got 10 seconds, Gray. Then we're coming in." The voice was closer now, and Marcus could hear multiple horses. They had brought reinforcements. He climbed through the window, cradling the baby against his chest, and disappeared into the underbrush just as the front door exploded inward. The forest was his ally, a maze of trees and shadows that had sheltered him during his darkest days. He moved with surprising stealth for a man carrying a child, years of hunting and tracking serving him well despite his condition. Behind him, he could hear the men searching his cabin, their voices growing angrier as they realized their quarry had escaped. Marcus didn't stop moving until he reached a small cave he had discovered months ago. Hidden behind a waterfall. Inside the cave, he finally allowed himself to breathe. The baby looked up at him with those remarkable blue eyes, and Marcus felt something he hadn't experienced in years. Purpose. This child needed him, and for the first time since his family's death, he had a reason to live. He examined the medallion more closely in the dim light. It was made of silver and gold, with intricate engravings that seemed to tell a story. At its center was a symbol he recognized, the mark of the Cartwright family. But there were other symbols, too, ones that looked almost ancient, as if they predated the settlement of the territory. Don't miss what happens next. Subscribe to our channel and hit the notification bell to see how Marcus and baby Sarah face the dangers that await them. The map was equally mysterious. It showed not just geographical features, but also what appeared to be a complex puzzle. Lines connected various landmarks, and small symbols marked specific locations. At the bottom, in faded ink, were the words, "The treasure of 3 generations lies where the eagle soars highest and the water runs deepest." Marcus studied the map until his eyes grew heavy. The adrenaline was wearing off, replaced by the exhaustion of a man who had been running on alcohol and despair for too long. But as he held the sleeping child, he made a silent vow. Whatever this treasure was, whatever forces were arrayed against them, he would protect Sarah Elizabeth Cartwright with his life. The sound of horses in the distance reminded him that their pursuers were still searching. Marcus knew he couldn't stay in the cave forever, but he also knew he couldn't face what was coming in his current condition. He needed to get sober, to remember who he had been before grief destroyed him. As night fell over the mountains, Marcus Gray began the most important transformation of his life. The broken drunk who had awakened that morning was gone, replaced by a man with a mission. He didn't know what tomorrow would bring, but he knew one thing for certain. The wolves might be coming, but they would find a very different Marcus Gray waiting for them. The baby stirred in his arms, and Marcus whispered a promise that would change both their lives forever. "I won't let them hurt you, little one. I swear it on my family's grave." Outside the cave, the hunt continued, but inside, hope had been reborn. Marcus Gray hadn't slept in 36 hours. The baby, Sarah, had finally settled into a peaceful slumber against his chest, but he dared not close his eyes. Through the cave opening, he could see torches moving through the forest like angry fireflies searching for their hiding place. If you're captivated by this tale of redemption and danger, make sure to subscribe to our channel for more thrilling stories from the untamed frontier. The withdrawal from alcohol was hitting him hard. His hands shook violently, cold sweats drenched his clothes, and his vision blurred at the edges. But every time he looked at the innocent child in his arms, his resolve strengthened. This baby had given him something he thought he'd lost forever: A reason to fight Dot as dawn broke over the mountains. Marcus made a decision that would define the rest of their journey. He couldn't run forever, and he couldn't protect Sarah while fighting his own demons. He needed help, but the note's warning echoed in his mind. Trust no one in Cedar Falls. However, there was one person who might be different. Doc Henley lived in a small cabin 5 miles north, a man who had delivered half the babies in the territory, and asked no questions about the troubles that brought people to his door. If anyone could help with Sarah's immediate needs, it would be him. Marcus wrapped the baby in his coat and stepped out into the morning mist. The forest was eerily quiet, but his trained eye caught signs of the previous night's search. Broken branches, horse tracks, and the lingering scent of tobacco smoke. These weren't ordinary drifters or bandits. They moved with military precision and seemed to know the territory as well as he did. The journey to Doc Henley's cabin was treacherous. Marcus had to avoid the main trails, navigating through dense underbrush and rocky terrain while carrying a 6-month-old baby. Every snap of a twig, every bird call, sent adrenaline coursing through his system. His body was failing him, but his mind was sharper than it had been in years. Halfway to their destination, Marcus heard what he had been dreading, the sound of approaching horses. He dove behind a fallen log, pressing Sarah close to his chest and praying she wouldn't cry. 3 riders emerged from the morning fog, their black dusters marking them as part of the group that had attacked his cabin. "Boss ain't gonna be happy if we don't find that baby," one of them said, his voice carrying a slight accent that Marcus couldn't place. "She's got to be with the drunk," another replied. "Question is, how far could a broken-down fool like Gray get with a baby?" The third rider, clearly the leader, dismounted and examined the ground carefully. "He's craftier than you think. Gray was the best tracker in the territory before his family died. Don't underestimate him." Marcus's blood ran cold. These men knew about his past, about his skills, about his family. This wasn't a random attack. It was a carefully planned operation. But who was behind it, and why did they want Sarah so desperately? The riders moved on, but their words lingered in Marcus's mind. Someone with significant resources was orchestrating this hunt, someone who had done their homework about both him and the Cartwright family. The mystery was deepening, and Marcus was beginning to realize that saving Sarah might require him to become the man he used to be. Doc Henley's cabin appeared through the trees like a beacon of hope. The elderly physician was tending to his garden, his white hair gleaming in the morning sun. When he saw Marcus emerge from the forest with a baby, his expression shifted from surprise to concern. "Marcus Gray, as I live and breathe," Doc said, setting down his tools. "What brings you down from your mountain with a child?" Marcus looked around nervously, then made a decision that went against every instinct. "Doc, I need your help, and I need you to ask no questions." The old physician studied Marcus's face, taking in the signs of withdrawal, the desperate exhaustion, and the protective way he held the baby. "Come inside, son. Let's see what we're dealing with." Inside the cabin, Doc Henley examined Sarah with gentle hands while Marcus paced like a caged animal. The baby was healthy, but needed proper food and care, things Marcus couldn't provide in his current situation. "She's a beautiful child," Doc said softly. "But she's not yours, is she?" Marcus hesitated, then pulled out the medallion and map. "Her name is Sarah Elizabeth Cartwright. Her father was Thomas Cartwright, and there are men who want to kill her for what she represents." Doc's eyes widened as he examined the medallion. Thomas Cartwright's daughter? But he disappeared months ago. Everyone assumed he was dead. Apparently he was, but not before ensuring his daughter had a protector, Marcus said grimly. "Problem is, I'm not sure I'm the right man for the job." Doc Henley set down the medallion and looked Marcus straight in the eyes. "You're sober 4. The first time in 3 years, aren't you? Marcus nodded, unable to speak. And you're exactly the man for the job, Doc said firmly. I've known you since you were a boy, Marcus. I delivered your son, and I held your wife's hand when she died. You're not broken, you're just wounded. And wounded men can heal. The sound of approaching horses interrupted their conversation. Doc peered out the window and cursed under his breath. 6 riders, all armed. You need to go now. But Marcus was already moving, gathering Sarah and the precious artifacts. Doc pressed a bag of supplies into his hands. Baby formula, bottles, and medical supplies. There's a hidden trail behind the cabin, Doc whispered urgently. It leads to the old mining camp at Eagle's Rest. You might find answers there. Marcus paused at the back door. Doc, if they ask about me, ... I never saw you, the old man said, with a sad smile. But Marcus, whatever you're running from, don't let it consume you. That baby needs the man you used to be, not the ghost you've become. The escape from Doc's cabin was narrow. Marcus could hear the riders questioning the physician as he made his way up the hidden trail. Doc's voice was steady and convincing, but Marcus knew these men wouldn't be fooled for long. Eagle's Rest had been abandoned for over a decade, but the mining camp's location high in the mountains offered both shelter and a strategic advantage. As Marcus climbed higher, carrying Sarah and fighting his body's rebellion against sobriety, he began to understand why someone had chosen him for this mission. The camp came into view as the sun reached its zenith. Old buildings stood like weathered sentinels against the sky, and Marcus could see why the note had mentioned where the eagle soars highest. This was the highest point in the territory, a place where a man could see for miles in every direction. Inside the largest building, Marcus found evidence that someone had been there recently. Supplies were stacked neatly in one corner, and a crude map of the territory was pinned to the wall. Red X marks indicated locations throughout the mountains, and Marcus realized he was looking at a systematic search pattern. Sarah began to cry, and Marcus prepared a bottle with shaking hands. As he fed her, he studied the map more carefully. The pattern wasn't random. It was methodical, professional. Someone with significant resources was coordinating this search, and they had been at it for months. A piece of paper tucked behind the map caught his attention. It was a telegram dated 3 days ago. Gray has the package. Increase search radius. Nitrogen monoxide witnesses. Marcus's blood turned to ice. They had been planning this for days, possibly weeks. The appearance of Sarah on his doorstep hadn't been random. It had been orchestrated. But by whom and why? The mystery deepens and the danger escalates. Subscribe to our channel and ring that notification bell to see how Marcus uncovers the truth behind this deadly conspiracy. As he pondered these questions, Marcus heard something that made his heart race, the sound of multiple horses approaching Eagle's Rest. They had found him again, and this time there was nowhere to run. He looked down at Sarah, who was watching him with those incredible blue eyes, and made a decision that would change everything. He was done running. It was time to remember who Marcus Gray had been before grief destroyed him. He was the former sheriff of Cedar Falls, a man who had never lost a gunfight, never backed down from a challenge, and never failed to protect the innocent. The drunk who had lived in that mountain cabin was dead. In his place stood a man with a mission, a man who would do whatever it took to keep this baby safe. The horses were closer now, and Marcus could hear voices calling out orders. He positioned himself at the window, wishing he had his guns, but knowing that his greatest weapon was his mind. He had been the best lawman in the territory once, and it was time to prove that some things never fade away. As the first rider appeared in the clearing below, Marcus Gray smiled grimly. The hunt was about to become a war, and he intended to win. The abandoned mining camp at Eagle's Rest had become a fortress. Marcus Gray had spent 2 days preparing for what he knew would be his final confrontation with the mysterious forces hunting baby, Sarah. His withdrawal symptoms had mostly passed, replaced by a clarity of purpose he hadn't felt in years. You followed this incredible journey of redemption and danger. Now witness the explosive finale. Subscribe to our channel for more heart-pounding tales from the Old West. Sarah slept peacefully in a makeshift crib he had constructed from mining equipment and old blankets. The baby had become his anchor, the reason he had fought through the pain of sobering up and remembered who he used to be. Every time he looked at her, he saw hope for a future he had thought was lost forever. The medallion and map had revealed more secrets during his 2 days of study. The symbols weren't random. They were a code, one that pointed to 3 separate locations in the mountains. Marcus had finally deciphered the message. The treasure of 3 generations lies where the eagle soars highest and the water runs deepest. Eagles. Rest was where the eagle soared highest, and beneath the camp, Marcus had discovered an underground river system that the miners had abandoned when they struck water instead of gold. The pieces were falling into place, but so were his enemies. His spyglass, Marcus could see them assembling in the valley below. At least 20 men, all armed, all displaying the same military precision he had observed before. At their head rode a man Marcus recognized with a shock that nearly stole his breath. Colonel James Brennan, his former commanding officer from the war. Brennan had been cashiered from the army 5 years ago for corruption, but seeing him now explained everything. This wasn't about random bandits seeking easy money. This was about a disgraced officer trying to rebuild his fortune through theft and murder. The baby stirred, and Marcus gently rocked her back to sleep. "Don't worry, little one," he whispered. "I'm not the same man who failed his family. I won't fail you." A white flag appeared in the valley, and Marcus watched as a single rider approached the camp. It was Brennan himself, coming to parley. Marcus checked his weapons. He had managed to acquire a rifle and pistol from the camp's old armory, and went out to meet his fate. Brennan looked older, harder, his once proud uniform replaced by the practical clothes of a frontier opportunist. But his eyes still held the same cold calculation that had made him effective as a soldier and dangerous as a criminal. "Marcus Gray," Brennan called out, stopping just outside rifle range. "You're looking better than I expected. Heard you'd become quite the drunk." "I got better," Marcus replied, his voice steady. "What do you want, Colonel?" "You know what I want. The Cartwright child and whatever she's carrying. Hand them over, and you can walk away from this." Marcus laughed, a sound that echoed strangely in the mountain air. "You really think I'd believe that? You didn't come all this way with 20 men just to let me walk away." Brennan's expression hardened. "Thomas Cartwright found something in these mountains, something worth more than all the gold in California. That medallion and map are the keys to it, and I've spent too much time and money tracking them down to let a broken-down drunk stand in my way." "What did he find?" Marcus asked, genuinely curious. "The lost treasure of the Aztec Emperor Montezuma," Brennan said, his eyes gleaming with greed. "Cartwright discovered that Spanish conquistadors hid it in these mountains centuries ago. The medallion is the key to finding it, and the map shows where it's buried." Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. If Brennan was right, then Sarah wasn't just carrying her birthright. She was carrying one of the greatest treasures in human history, and men like Brennan would kill anyone to possess it. "The baby dies with me," Marcus said firmly. "That's not negotiable." Brennan's facade of civility finally cracked. "Then you'll both die. I gave you a chance, Gray. Remember that when you're bleeding out in the dirt." As Brennan rode back to his men, Marcus returned to the camp with a heavy heart. He had hoped for a miracle, but he had expected this outcome. 20 armed men against one aging ex-sheriff with a baby to protect. The odds were impossible, but Marcus had faced impossible odds before. He spent the afternoon setting traps and preparing defensive positions. The mining camp's layout offered some advantages: narrow approaches, elevated positions, and plenty of cover. But 20 men could surround him easily, and he had limited ammunition. As the sun began to set, Marcus made his peace with the world. He wrote a letter explaining everything he had learned, addressing it to the territorial governor, and sealing it with Sarah's medallion. If he died here, at least someone would know the truth. Sarah woke as the first shots rang out. Marcus had been expecting a night attack, and Brennan didn't disappoint. The assault came from 3 directions simultaneously, muzzle flashes lighting up the darkness like deadly fireflies. Marcus moved through the camp with the fluid grace of a man who had found his purpose. Each shot counted, each movement calculated. He had become death incarnate, protecting the innocent child who slept in the heart of the storm. The battle raged for hours. Marcus's traps took their toll, and his superior knowledge of the terrain gave him an advantage. But gradually, inevitably, Brennan's men closed the net. By dawn, Marcus was down to his last few bullets, and enemy fire was coming from all sides. Then, something happened that changed everything. The sound of approaching horses came from the east, but these weren't more of Brennan's men. These were cavalry, their blue uniforms gleaming in the morning sun. Doc Henley had kept his word. After Brennan's men had questioned him, the old physician had ridden hard to Fort Collins, carrying news of the attack and Marcus's location. The cavalry had arrived just in time. The battle turned quickly. Brennan's men, caught between Marcus's position and the approaching cavalry, found themselves in an impossible situation. Some surrendered immediately, others tried to fight their way out, but most simply scattered into the mountains. Brennan himself made one last desperate attempt to reach Sarah. He fought his way through the camp, his pistol blazing, his face twisted. With rage and desperation, Marcus met him in the main building, and the 2 men faced each other over the sleeping baby. "You cost me everything," Brennan snarled, his gun trained on Marcus. "You cost yourself everything," Marcus replied calmly. "The moment you chose greed over honor." The final gunfight was quick and decisive. Marcus's shot was true, and Brennan fell without firing a single round. As the disgraced colonel lay dying, Marcus felt no satisfaction, only sadness. For what? The man had become. Captain Rodriguez of the 7th Cavalry found Marcus holding Sarah in the aftermath of the battle. The baby was unharmed, and Marcus was wounded but alive. More importantly, he was whole in a way he hadn't been for years. "Is it true?" Rodriguez asked, examining the medallion and map. "About the treasure?" Marcus looked down at Sarah, who was gurgling happily in his arms. "Maybe, but the real treasure is right here. The adventure concludes, but the legend lives on." Subscribe to our channel and hit that notification bell for more incredible stories of courage and redemption from the untamed frontier. In the weeks that followed, Marcus Gray became Sarah's legal guardian. The territorial governor, impressed by his actions, offered him his old job back, but Marcus declined. He had found a new purpose in life, and it didn't involve wearing a badge. The medallion and map did indeed lead to a treasure, but not the Aztec gold that Brennan had imagined. Instead, they revealed the location of Thomas Cartwright's secret gold mine, a fortune that would ensure Sarah's future was secure. Marcus used part of the money to build a proper home for himself and Sarah, and the rest he invested in the territory's development. He became a pillar of the community, respected and admired for his transformation from broken drunk to heroic protector. Years later, when Sarah was old enough to understand, Marcus would tell her the story of how she had saved him as much as he had saved her. The baby who had appeared on his doorstep hadn't just brought him a mission. She had brought him redemption. The mountains around Eagle's Rest stood as silent witnesses to the events that had unfolded there. And sometimes, when the wind was right, travelers claimed they could still hear the echo of gunfire and the cry of a baby who had changed one man's life forever. Marcus Gray had begun this journey as a man lost to the world, drowning in grief and alcohol. He ended it as a father, a protector, and a man who had rediscovered what it meant to live with purpose. The treasure that mattered most hadn't been buried in the mountains. It had been delivered to his doorstep in a wicker basket, changing his life and giving him a future he never thought possible. Thank you for joining us on this incredible journey of redemption and courage. If this story moved you, make sure you're subscribed to our channel for more powerful tales from the Old West that will touch your heart and inspire your soul. Hit that notification bell and share this story with others who need to hear that it's never too late to change your life. In the end, the man who had lost everything found something greater than he had ever imagined. A second chance at life, love, and the opportunity to be the father he had always meant to be. And in the mountains of the American West, where legends are born and heroes are made, the story of Marcus Gray and Sarah Elizabeth Cartwright became a tale that would be told for generations to come. The baby with the medallion and map had indeed brought treasure to a man lost to the world, but the greatest treasure of all was the love between a father and daughter who had found each other when they needed it most.